Learners from several schools in Sekhukhune, Mopani and Vhembe districts in Limpopo have missed the first day of school due to flooding in most parts of the province. The tourism sector has also been negatively affected by heavy rains, with some holidaymakers in the Kruger National Park area having their travel plans upended. At the Ga-Mampa Village in Mafefe outside Lebowakgomo, learners were unable to attend their first day of school due to the overflowing Mohlapitsi River. There are no alternative routes into and out of the village, with residents saying they've been engaging with the Lepelle-Nkumpi local municipalities to build an access road and bridge to their village. For more on this impact on the floods, we're joined by the Limpopo Provincial Government Spokesperson, Ndavhe Ramakuela. Ndavhe, good evening. Thank you so much for your time once again. Really do appreciate you coming back onto the program to give us once again an update on the latest. When we had last spoke last evening, you had mentioned that the Premier will today meet with disaster management teams and various stakeholders in the province. What were the outcomes of those engagements?
Yeah, good evening, Oliver, and thanks for allowing us time to disseminate information on the current disaster that is affecting our province, particularly from the floods that have ravaged parts of the northeastern part of our province. The Premier had a meeting just a few hours ago with the members of the Executive Council, mayors and executive mayors of district municipalities, as well as the disaster management centers, as well as district disaster management centers, wherein we were taking stock of all the areas that are affected, and we can confirm that indeed there are still a number of areas within our districts, particularly in Vhembe, Mopani, as well as Sekhukhune, areas that have rivers that flow majorly into the Limpopo River, going to the Kruger National Park. They've been affected largely and making it difficult for people to access health facilities and the schools in those areas. As we indicated yesterday, we had asked that schools in those areas should not open to allow for the easing of the weather. The inclement weather is expected to continue until Saturday. It's only after Saturday that we will have a clear picture of where we're going. But as of this morning and even this afternoon, a number of areas were still affected. What the Premier has done now is convene that particular meeting, which has taken stock. Part of it has seen that we have extensive damage on roads that are leading to major areas. So for the next 3 to 4 days, the focus will be on rescue and assisting those who are trapped in various areas. We have seen a number of people who were cornered in some of the areas. The Pafuri border gate, we still have members of the South African Defence Force and the South African Police Services and the Border Management Authority who are to be rescued out of the area. You spoke earlier about Mohlapitsi River in the Lepelle-Nkumpi area of the Capricorn district, who are also affected that they're not able to go to school. And we had encouraged those not to be venturing outside because the idea of crossing the Lepelle River is one of the most difficult one during this time of the rains. What the Premier has then directed is that between today and the next 6 days, when all the possibly the rain would have stopped, we will then have an appropriate report, because what we have now doesn't include what damages would have been assessed between now and next week. The Executive Council will meet on Wednesday, wherein it will then take that formally that report and make sure that it's submitted. The process involves submission to the National Disaster Management Center, which will then make assessment and evaluation of our request. But in addition to that, for rescue operations and
very
for
specifically,
emergency
sorry,
relief,
Ndavhe, just very specifically to underscore the very specific requests, what are the components of it?
The components are to look into roads infrastructure, to look at electrical infrastructure that has been affected. There are households that are displaced, or the roofs have been removed.
So it would be a further assessment. Sorry, Ndavhe, sorry for interjecting here. Just for clarity, it would be basically a request for further assessment on the scale and scope of the damage.
Yes, it is, because as it is, a lot of roads are still submerged in those areas
Okay.
as we speak now.
Yeah.
We have made assessment of over 480 kilometers of roads that are affected now, but then we'll need to have a final determination of that as we continue. That involves as well the issues of water infrastructure, because a number of purification plants, dams, and that affected. So those also will need to go into that particular assessment. So
Yeah.
all of that work will need rain to stop. And like we said, from the South African Weather Services, there are a number of days that they've predicted that until the 20th of January, we'll still be
Yeah.
experiencing a bit of rain from the northeastern parts of the country.
Has the preliminary report that the Premier has received warrant a request for perhaps consideration by the disaster management authorities for a provincial disaster to be declared at all?
It will eventually reach that part because although we don't have the exact figures, whereas I've spoken about over 500 kilometers of roads that are affected, over 2,000 households that have been affected, and there are schools that are affected in the area, over 50 of those that have been affected. So the province would not possibly
Sorry, just on that, Ndavhe, do you know the scale of the damage that the 50 schools have experienced? Are some of them able to open and continue to operating, or is it at the scale of having to close to be, of course, reconstructed and or to be repaired before they can open?
The scale at which may require temporary accommodation for some of those schools, which means temporary classrooms, and that is part of the assessment or part of the infrastructure that will require for the schools to operate. But at the moment, there are not as many as that. There's roofing that will be required to be done. But as you know, it's a process that takes not just a day, which is why then the temporary relief will be put in place.
Across which regions do these 50 schools span?
They span across all our regions, our districts, because the assessment doesn't only
Across all
begin
districts?
in the past 3 days. We started having from the 25th of December, from the side of Waterberg going all the way to Capricorn in the Blowback area. That's where the storm had ravaged a lot earlier. So that assessment was the first assessment.
Yeah.
So we have a 2-part assessment, that one part, and then to the January assessment, which will then be combined to form one unit.
Just a last question, Ndavhe. Will schools, particularly in the Mopani and Vhembe districts, be opening anytime soon? If so, what is the indication?
The indications are that by Saturday, the weather would have eased up to allow the mop-up operations and to open part of the roads and areas that we need to use for access. Even if the weather might continue with a bit of rain until the 20th, it won't be at the scale at which we have at the moment.
So what's the date preemptively, or at least tentatively, for schools to reopen in those areas affected?
We'll do daily monitoring. Also, as of next week, we'll be communicating what we have made assessment of, and then we'll notify communities of the steps that we're taking as the provincial government for them to be able to either attend schools, clinics, and other areas. What we are calling for at the moment is that we are seeing a lot of individuals risking areas where we've asked them to stay away from, either using cars or going to take photographs or to play within those areas.
Sure.
It is some of the things that will bring us for the past 24 hours. We have seen incidents wherein people are not obeying those instructions when we are asking them to stay away, that those who have to travel should avoid traveling because of the inclement weather.
Yeah, we're going to leave it there. Ndavhe, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Ndavhe Ramakuela is the provincial spokesperson in Limpopo.